Hello and welcome back to the Alchemical Arts. Hope everyone is well out there. Today I think I'll go back to doing some experiments with my ochre, because I enjoyed doing the ochre stuff. In fact, I always enjoy doing work with ochre because it's, I don't know, there's something really nice about the earth colours and being able to work just directly with something that comes straight out of the ground. As opposed to, as much as I love all the preparation work and the chemistry and the various transformations that go on, there's still something so fundamental about earth colours. But today I thought we'd go a slightly different direction rather than just processing up more ochre and going through that sort of process, and thought I'd look at the burning or calcining process for creating different colours from the ochre through the application of heat and fire to change the properties of it. Because, again, can't get more fundamental than earth and fire, so that should be kind of interesting. Plus I haven't done this yet, so a lot of this I'm just going to be winging it. I've been, doing a bit of reading, but there isn't that much information on calcining of ochre pigments. But, so in essence, the theory behind what's happening is most ochres are some sort of iron oxide based compound with a whole bunch of other particular minerals and things in there, due to wherever it's found in the world and the different kind of composition of the soil and the earth there. So there's a lot of variation in the chemistry of ochre pigments, but fundamentally what we're working with is iron oxide. And so the lighter yellow iron oxides have more water groups, or like oxygen hydrogen groups in and amongst there, and as you calcine it and heat the ochres, you start to reduce some of that water out, and you can change the shades to deeper and reds and browns and darker sort of colours, all the way through to black if you completely roast it, and you can make an iron black pigment. So all I'll do today is I'll grade up some of the ochre that I've got, so some stuff from here, and just, I think the process that I've read is you just lightly crush it into like little pea-shaped or pea-sized chunks, and then we'll put it into an iron pan. We'll heat the iron pan up, and we'll just sort of roast the little chunks of rock until we're satisfied with the colour. And apparently a lot of skill can come down to knowing how to identify a heated rock as being the suitable colour. So I don't actually know what to do here, so it's just going to be a process of heating and experimenting and seeing what happens. Alright, so here we're just outside at the moment, and I've just ground up a bunch of different ochre samples to test during the calcining. So essentially I've just graded them into sort of light colours. So we've got some more orangey ones here, some lighter yellowy sort of ones. These again are deeper again. We've got a very soft purpley sort of one over here, which was from that big chunk of really nice ochre that was seen in the first ochre video I did. This one's very orangey sort of yellow. And essentially what we've got here is just a big sort of half iron tube here, and we're just going to load the chunks into this, and then we'll pop them into a little forge burner thing that I sort of just quickly whipped up this morning, and yeah, we'll see how we go burning them. The reason I have the Syrian rue is not for practical reasons, but it was ancient practice in the past to bless the fire when working with the fire so we're talking like ancient African times, prehistory sort of times, we know that there's been a long tradition of blessing the forge and the fire to ward off evil spirits. And so Pergamon Hamala or Syrian rue has a long history in the Middle East and Africa as being used to ward off potential evil entities and spirits and so forth. So I figured we'd spread a little bit out and burn and suffumigate the forge before we start this process, because why not? It seems like a fun thing to do. So this is the burner thing that I just constructed here, which at the bottom we have the really old burner that I have from my original kiln or forge, jeweler's furnace. So this one's, it's a good old, I don't know, 120-year-old burner. And then on top I've just put a few fire bricks around just to help insulate and keep in a bit of the heat. And so it's really simple, and I'll just slide that piece of iron in there and we'll calcine and roast our ochre samples. Okay, let's light it. So in goes the iron pan. Now with a little bit of the Pergamon Hamala. The Pergamon Hamala has a very sweet, delicious smell. And sort of, as you saw that waft of smoke coming out there. I think that's good now. Should be blessed. So we'll load in some of the ochre into there. It's in the fire. Now I haven't exactly worked out how to know when to take things out, but I'm just sort of playing it by eye and hoping it sort of works out right. I think for this first one we'll just do a very light roasting, and then we might do a few that are much, much heavier in roast. I think that's alright, so here we are after doing a whole bunch of different calcining and burning of the pigments. And so the top row here is the original samples, and the bottom row is what they've resulted in. And so obviously some of the more drastic transformations were things like these that went from a very sort of soft yellowy orange color to very much a rusty red orange sort of browny tone. Something like this here, which started off already as quite an orange tone, really didn't deepen that much at all from calcining. I could probably have run this for much, much longer. This one here that was the soft sort of purpley one was basically no change at all, and I heated it for quite some time and very little variation. This one, again, not that much of a change. Both of these were already deep, and yeah. The real trick will be, so I've started grinding some of it up, and it's very like nice sort of chocolate brown color, which makes me think that a lot of this will end up coming out very much like a burnt sienna sort of style tone. Not that I'll call this a burnt sienna, because that new sienna refers to the place. It's just become ubiquitous with that color. So I think the most drastic change was this first sample I actually did, where you have this sort of pale yellow colour and then this very burnt chocolatey colour. So after hours of grinding, here we are with everything ground roughly, and there's some distinct colour changes between some of them. Some of them almost remained exactly the same upon calcining, like these two here. These ones didn't really change that much. The more yellow pigments, the more yellow ochres certainly changed to more chocolatey browns. The more orange ones tended to stay the same, and this one here, I think this is more of a sort of soft clay than it is an iron oxide, so that's probably part of why we're not getting much of a colour change. Anyway, I'm kind of sore and tired now after grinding all of this, but the next process is to wash and leavigate everything so that we can get all the impurities out and see the colour a little bit better. So yep, off to do that. Alright, after a ton of grinding, leavigating, washing, sieving, grinding, drying, and all that sort of stuff, this was probably the best example of the various colours that we ended up with from all of that ochre and processing, which there's still a ton more to be done, but I already spent hours yesterday grinding and doing all of that work that I think I'll leave some of the final processing to another day. So up in the top here we have one of the more sort of yellower, I guess, yeah, it's like a raw sienna, yellowy sort of ochre colour. That this is one of the calcined earth pigments, and you can see here next to it, this is what happened after calcining it. So we ended up with a much more sort of chocolatey brown colour, which when it's dry it's very powdery, so it's hard to see the actual colour as opposed to what it looks like wet or in a paint binder. This one down here was a slightly, I guess, more orangey red, warmer version of this one. And then the one over here was that soft pale one that didn't change at all when I calcined it. And ultimately what that tells me is that this one contains very little iron oxide, which is why it doesn't undergo the transformation, and it's more probably just a mixture of clays rather than a particular ochre of any particular kind. Doesn't mean the colour's not interesting or nice, it's just different from your sort of more traditional ochre colours. So all in all, I'm reasonably happy with the results, I think. So one of the main problems I've faced with this is these rocks, or sort of ochre sample rock things that I've been using for these experiments, they're actually kind of reasonably poor in colour already to begin with, so they're not the most high quality ochre that I could be working with. And so I think moving forward with ochre experiments, I'd like to go out and I might need to do some field trips to try and find some better samples to work with, and that way we can potentially maximize our colour potential. I have a few little spots in mind. I saw one exposed hillside from when I was on the train the other day, and it looked like it had some promising yellow ochre, so I'll go out and check that out. I think finally with this video I might just, because I have some watercolour medium made up at the moment, because I've been making watercolours from the pigments I've been making, which is exciting, and there'll be more on that to come in the future. I might just grind up some of these into some watercolour tones so you can get a feel for how the pigment actually looks as a paint. Just thought I'd show you this little bit here, as you can see the drastic transition between dry pigment and wet pigment, as I've added just a little bit of watercolour binder here to this last sample that I'm preparing up as a test watercolour. And well, it looks like chocolate, really. Looks like a really, I mean, I'm a sucker for a good milk chocolate, and this is as close as you get to a chocolate colour. So I like this. This is also the kinds of browns that I like to paint with, particularly in oils. Watercolors are not my forte, but Oils are definitely my comfort zone, along with tempera, and I pretty much start all of my oil paintings with some sort of brown like this, and maybe like a yellow ochre, a bit of white, and a little bit of blue to make a black, because the combination of this plus blue, like ultramarine blue or Prussian blue, tends to yield some of my favorite blacks. I don't really... occasionally I use actual straight blacks, but I particularly like the blue, brown, black combo that can often occur. You can see it there, grinding up. You can hear the granules. I probably, to be honest, in a final preparation of this, I would probably run through a 325 mesh sieve to really only pick and select the finest particles, but we'll grind it down, it'll work. Alright, so last little thing for this video, I've got the watercolor samples made up here, and I thought I'd just give you a quick show of them on some paper here. So this first one was the chocolate brown one that I was just last doing there. Excuse my watercolor technique, I'm sure it's very average. So they are a little bit granulating, so I think I need to work on that. But the colour's nice. So now the slightly reddier brown one. Oh, that one definitely mixed better. It's very similar in tone. You can barely tell the difference between that and that one. Oh, this one has stronger tinting strength, I think. And this is the weird purpley one, the one that was very, very light. Like you can see, here's what it looks like as a pigment. Here's what it's like as a watercolor. Totally different color. But let's give you a little example of what that one's like. So it's like a very translucent color. It's almost like it would work as like a glazing earth tone, and it's very grey. There's some subtlety of purples. God, I'm not painting like a watercolorist here at all. I'm trying to paint like an oil painter with watercolors, which is absurd. In fact, I think this pigment would be better suited to oils. It doesn't have the oomph or the strength it needs for water. Except in very light washes it might make for some interesting greys in landscape painting, which could have some nice applications. And last but not least, our original yellow. See, now that there is what I expect from a very simple yellow ochre style thing. It's not like a very goldeny ochre, it's definitely tinging more to the, as you can see, it's very green in nature. It's definitely tilting towards that sort of raw sienna, green sort of tones. But again, it washes out quite nicely as a simple sort of colour. So, there we go. There are our ochre pigments. So, a couple of days worth of work, a whole bunch of grinding, but I'm pretty happy with the results. If you're interested in trying any of the watercolours, which I'm heading towards trying to figure out whether I can produce these to find a way to get the pigments out to the public, I'll be giving watercolor samples away to my Patreon supporters, so also to the Patreon people out there watching this video. I should be sending out some colours to you in the next, well, by the end of this week, hopefully, or next week. Anyway, thank you all for watching and tuning in for another glimpse at what it is that I'm doing here, whatever that might be, making colour. It's good fun. And I thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.